She didn't leave because she stopped feeling. She left because something inside her stopped feeling safe enough to stay. Listen to me carefully. When a woman pulls away, the man's instinct is to chase, explain, apologize, prove, remind her of memories, flood her phone with logic and emotion. From the outside, it looks loving. From inside her nervous system, it feels like pressure. And pressure never pulls a woman back. It quietly seals the door. As a psychologist, I've watched this pattern destroy men who had good hearts and strong potential. Not because they were unworthy, but because they moved in the exact opposite direction of what female psychology responds to during separation. Attraction doesn't die in one moment. It erodes when polarity collapses, when your emotional center shifts from grounded to needy, from self-contained to reactive. Her body senses it before her mind can explain it. Here's the truth most men are never told. A woman doesn't come back because you convince her. She comes back because her nervous system reassociates you with emotional safety, mystery, and strength. And none of those can be argued into existence. When you chase, you signal that your emotional stability depends on her response. That flips the power dynamic in a way that feels heavy to her. Even if she still cares, her attraction goes quiet. Her body doesn't feel invited. It feels responsible. And responsibility kills desire faster than silence ever could. What actually works is counterintuitive. You don't disappear to punish her. You don't withdraw to manipulate. You return to yourself. You regulate your emotions instead of outsourcing them to her validation. You stop performing love and start embodying steadiness. Women are biologically wired to read emotional congruence. If your words say, "I'm fine," but your energy says, "I'm collapsing without you," her system hears the truth. But when you genuinely stabilize, when your life, routines, and self-respect remain intact without needing an audience, something shifts. The tension releases. Curiosity replaces resistance. This is why silence, when done correctly, is powerful. Not because it scares her, because it gives her space to feel, space to miss, space to wonder. When there's no pressure, her mind starts filling in the blanks. And what she remembers isn't the arguments. It's how she felt when things were good, how safe she felt when you were centered, how drawn she was when you weren't trying to hold on. Understand this deeply. The goal is not to get her back. The goal is to become emotionally anchored again. When you do that, her return becomes a possibility, not a pursuit. And paradoxically, that's when it's most likely to happen. Here's what most men don't realize until it's too late. When she leaves, her mind starts rewriting the story of you. Not consciously, neurologically. Her brain begins protecting her from emotional conflict by softening the bond. Every time you chase, beg, or over-explain, you unintentionally help her detach faster. Not because you're weak, but because her system is trying to resolve tension, and you're feeding it chaos. Female psychology during separation operates on emotional contrast. If everything feels heavy, dramatic, and emotionally noisy, her brain looks for relief. And relief in that moment is distance from you. This is what actually reopens the door is emotional polarity. Polarity is the felt difference between grounded and reactive energy. When you stop trying to manage her feelings and start managing your own, her nervous system finally gets space to breathe. That's when thoughts of you resurface without resistance. A woman doesn't miss words. She misses states. The way she felt around you when you were present, confident, and internally steady. If your current behavior contradicts that memory, her mind can't reconcile it, so it chooses the version of you that justifies staying away. This is why emotional restraint is not indifference, it's regulation. When you don't immediately respond to breadcrumbs, when you don't interrogate silence, when you don't rush to fix something she hasn't asked you to fix, you send a powerful signal. I can hold my center even in uncertainty. And that signal is deeply attractive. Attraction is not built on reassurance. It's built on trust in your emotional spine. When she senses that your sense of self remains intact with or without her, something subtle happens. The pressure dissolves. Her defense is lower. Curiosity replaces certainty. She starts asking questions internally she didn't expect. Why isn't he chasing? How is he doing so well? Did I misjudge his strength? This doesn't happen because you're playing a game. It happens because you stopped abandoning yourself. And when a man stops abandoning himself, he becomes emotionally magnetic. But here's the part men resist the most. You must genuinely be okay if she doesn't come back, not as a threat, as a truth. Because women are exquisitely sensitive to incongruence. If you're pretending to move on, she'll feel the tension. If you actually move forward, healthier, calmer, self-directed, she feels safety again. And safety is the doorway through which attraction re-enters. The paradox is brutal, but real. The moment you stop needing her return to feel whole is the moment she can feel you again without pressure. And whether she comes back or not, you win. Because you're no longer shrinking yourself to be chosen. Now let's talk about the moment that actually changes everything. The moment most men never see because they're too busy trying to control the outcome. This is where female psychology quietly flips, not in a dramatic message, not in a sudden apology, but in a slow internal recalibration that happens when your absence feels different than she expected. When you stop chasing, her mind initially feels relief. That's normal. Relief from emotional intensity, from pressure, from having to manage your reactions. Many men misread this phase and panic. They think, she's happier without me. But relief is not closure. Relief is just silence after noise. What comes next is comparison. Her nervous system starts comparing the emotional climate with you versus without you. And here's the critical factor. If your absence feels calm, dignified, and self-contained, not bitter, not performative, not passive-aggressive, her system doesn't register you as a threat anymore. It registers you as unresolved. Unresolved bonds are powerful. This is when memory changes tone. Instead of replaying the conflicts, her mind starts revisiting emotional safety. The way you listened when you were grounded, the way your presence slowed her down, the way she didn't feel chased but met. Attraction doesn't reignite through nostalgia alone. It reignites when her body remembers a regulated masculine presence. Most men unknowingly sabotage this phase by checking in, a harmless message, a polite question, a casual excuse to re-enter her emotional space. But what that actually does is collapse the contrast. It tells her nervous system, nothing has changed. And if nothing has changed, there's no reason to reopen the door. Real change is silent. It shows up in consistency, not announcements. This is also the phase where your self-improvement matters, but not in the way social media sells it. It's not about posting success. It's about internal coherence, sleeping better, training your body, structuring your days, reconnecting with purpose that existed before her. Women don't fall back in love with achievements. They fall back in love with alignment. Alignment is when your words, energy, and behavior tell the same story. I value connection, but I don't abandon myself for it. That story is felt, not heard. And when she senses it, something destabilizes her certainty, not enough to chase you, but enough to soften, enough to open curiosity, enough to reach out indirectly, test the emotional temperature, or simply sit with questions she didn't expect to have. This is where patience becomes power, not waiting in hope, waiting in wholeness. Because the moment you rush to capitalize on her curiosity, you turn safety back into pressure. Men think the goal is to get her to message. The real goal is to become the kind of man whose emotional presence doesn't demand, rush, or collapse. That's the man a woman can return to without fear of losing herself. Here is the final truth, and it's the one that decides everything. Women don't return to men who wait. They return to men who evolve. Waiting is passive. Evolution is felt. And female psychology responds to what is embodied, not what is hoped for. When she considers coming back, she is not asking, does he miss me? She already knows you do. She is asking a deeper, quieter question. Would it feel different this time? Her nervous system is scanning for signs of emotional maturity, self-leadership, and stability, not perfection, presence. This is why the men who truly get their ex back are often the ones who stop making her the center of their inner world. They rebuild their identity around values, discipline, and self-respect, not to prove anything, but because they refuse to remain fragmented. A fragmented man feels unpredictable, even if he is kind, even if he is loving. And unpredictability is unsafe to the female nervous system. But a regulated man, a man who can experience loss without collapsing, sends a powerful message. I can hold complexity without losing myself. That's the man a woman can return to without fear of repeating the past. If she reaches out and you are still emotionally charged, still outcome dependent, still seeking reassurance, she will feel it instantly, and she will retreat again. But if she reaches out and finds calm curiosity instead of hunger, grounded openness instead of tension, the dynamic resets, not because you played it cool, but because you became different. This is also where many men misunderstand masculinity. Masculinity is not emotional suppression, it's emotional containment. You feel deeply, but you don't leak, you don't collapse, you don't demand. You choose how you respond. That choice is everything. Because whether she comes back or not, this work changes you permanently. You stop chasing validation. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop outsourcing your emotional center. And paradoxically, this is what makes you deeply attractive, not just to her, but to life. If she returns, it will feel natural, unforced, safe. If she doesn't, you won't be diminished. You'll be stronger, clearer, and more self-directed than before. And that is not loss. That is initiation. So understand this clearly. The goal was never her return. The goal was your integration. Her return is simply a byproduct of a man who no longer abandons himself for love. Now ask yourself this equation and answer it honestly in the comments. Am I building my life around being chosen or around becoming someone I respect? If this message grounded you, like the video, subscribe, and share it with a friend who's still confusing attachment with love.